shorty wanna ball with the jeans. Money.
Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have a very different, very special video today. It's basically going through the CDs in my CD drawers, the physical CDs. I'm showing my age a little bit, but there's some incredible music and I have some incredible stories about how I came into this music and how I've lived with this music, and I really want to share that. So let's get started.
What they put up for you, I'm racing up the bars. They keep fucking with you, forgetting we the guys who, forgetting we the guys who. Hey, hey, what they put up for you, I'm racing up the bars. They keep fucking with you, forgetting we the guys who.
Some of it's newer, some of it's older, but this all really spans my musical memories. And to start off, this is a more recent CD. This is Playboi Carti's first album. Technically a mixtape, I think. The album itself is called Playboi Carti, but most people in the Playboi Carti hardcore fan community just call this self-titled. I got this at FYE, and this is relatively rare actually. Next up we have Migos Young Rich Nation, which is an album I bought at Best Buy. Definitely love this song. At the time, the song One Time, number 7 on this, I loved that song. They'd just gone to the YouTube Music Awards, the short-lived run of the YouTube Music Awards, and performed this song, and I could not get enough of the video, could not get enough of this song. Ran out to buy the album. This is their first studio album, which is before that point in time when all these Migos bandwagon fans came into existence after the second album came out. But I've been rocking with them for a really long time. Really like this album. And the other song you should check out on here, Just for Tonight, featuring Chris Brown. Really good song that I think didn't get the shine that it deserved, and didn't get a video, didn't get any push really, but I think could have been a really big single for them. Peace is the Mission, Major Lazer. And this is just one of those albums where I was having a phase where I was really discovering EDM music. This is towards the end of college for me. This album is really good, really short but really good. Every song on here is just like super high production value. I would check out Be Together on this one. Be Together has just an incredible instrumental, and I go back to this a lot. Of course, this one also features the big Lean On, which was a mega hit, and for a while the most streamed song on Spotify of all time. Then we have Schoolboy Q, his second album. Schoolboy Q, I really mark music as before Young Thug and after Young Thug, because after Young Thug came out, I went from huge rap music fan to completely obsessed with it. And so in the before Young Thug period of my life, the people that I really listened to were Schoolboy Q, Eminem, Machine Gun Kelly, a little bit of like 2 Chainz, and then all the obvious stuff like Wayne, Drake, and all that. At this period in time, Schoolboy Q, one of my favorite rappers, really liked this album. It was a really good second album for him, and I'm excited for his 2019 album. I would say off this one, you have to check out that Ride Out track featuring Vince Staples. Of course, that part with Kanye West is the big single off here. Taking It Back. This is an album that I bought very after the fact. This is the first Panic at the Disco album, and I really started being a fan of Panic at the Disco kind of on their third album. I became a fan of them more through watching their live, like concert videos of them on YouTube. And actually, that's the way I was able to access a lot of music artists. I really didn't have a big budget for going to buy CDs and stuff when I was younger. So I would just go on YouTube, watch like a full concert. Like I would say most full concert footages that are on YouTube are like hour and a half. And on like a Saturday when I was in college, my freshman year, I could spend like an entire morning and afternoon just watching full concert videos. This album is an absolute classic. I know a lot of other people who have this album, and I could say probably more so than any other album in my drawer. The song that I really like off here, they're number 12. There's a good reason these tables are numbered, honey. They have a really good concert footage of them in like Denver doing this song, and I would definitely suggest listening to that song. I also really like But Better If You Do, and I vow to learn that on piano one day. Beyonce Lemonade, this one doesn't need much explaining. I bought this shortly after the Grammys to see what all the buzz was about, because it was actually really hard to get the visual portion of this online, and it was really incredible. Beyonce really deserves all of the praise that she gets. She is truly among the world's biggest artists, and I like her work a lot. This is the second to the most recent Panic at the Disco album, Death of a Bachelor. This is the song that really reintroduced Panic at the Disco back into the mainstream with singles like Victorious and Hallelujah. Personally, I really like LA Devotee off this. I bought this album for myself, I bought this album for a friend, and a lot of my friends that I went to grade school with are also really big Panic at the Disco fans. So these are artists that are very nostalgic for me, and I still have a good group of friends that I can go to concerts with to specifically see this band. And why don't we knock off all the Panic at the Disco stuff at once? Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die. Probably one of my favorite Panic at the Disco albums, actually. Let me see where I rank this. Yeah, I would rank this as first just because a lot of Panic at the Disco albums have like 4 songs I like, but I would say I like almost every single song off this album. This is Gospel, such like a sweet and sad song. This is currently probably one of their top songs on their Apple Music. Vegas Lights, I love that song live so much. They open a lot of their shows with it. And Girls, Girls, Boys, the list goes on and on. This is really like the quintessential Panic at the Disco album for me. I mean, they've just gone through so many iterations. Their first album was a huge departure from their second. Their second album was a huge departure from their first, and they just continued to change band members and try different directions in music, but the common thread is really Brendan Urie, and he always comes up with a really compelling offering, and they're just a lot of fun to listen to on albums. They're a lot of fun live, and pretty much my favorite band, I gotta say. You know, them and Franz Ferdinand, who we're gonna get to in the drawer, are pretty much my favorite bands. Oh, to me, this is a very legendary album, Chief Keef Bang 3. I can tell you, not a lot of people have this. This is Chief in a really weird time in music where he got dropped from Interscope. He goes and kind of does his own thing, meets this billionaire, Alki David, who's kind of starting a music label but also does stuff with like 3D and holograms. And, you know, Chief ends up signing to this guy in what's a very different alternative music label, to say the least. So yeah, this was distributed from Film on Music. This is a double album, so there's 2 discs on this one, and I spent most of my time with the first disc. Superheroes Off Here is really good. Had a really cool music video with A$AP Rocky that came out super late, and that's kind of the theme with Chief Keef, is you get things late, no matter what. The other great song off here is I Just Wanna, featuring the late Mac Miller, and definitely check that out if you haven't already. I think I mentioned it before, Eminem, truly the person that I was introduced to music through him, so rap music specifically. Here's the Slim Shady LP. I ended up buying this for like $5 way after the fact. This is truly one of his best works. I can go into the verse of a lot of songs on here. I can't even begin to think what my favorite Eminem album or song is, honestly. To me, he's just the greatest rapper of all time by a lot, and I'm a lifelong fan. Who? Not a hipster alive doesn't have this in their CD music drawer. Lana Del Rey, Born to Die. When Lana's sound first hit the mainstream with her song Video Games, I mean, it was just a real revelation. It would go on to be really overanalyzed, her whole style, her whole swag, but Lana is undeniably a true star. I listened to this album very many times. This is probably my most listened to non-rap album. I just love Born to Die off here, the first track on the listing, and Summertime Sadness actually has a ton of great DJ remixes and stuff like that. Lana Del Rey, Born to Die. I think this is a very essential album of the early 2010s. I would have to put this as like a must-listen to album for any music historian, anyone who feels that they really want a beat of the 2000s. This is it, Lana Del Rey, Born to Die. And here we have Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar. I bought this on sale at Christmas time, right after this album came out, which was a summertime release, I believe. This album really brought Kendrick to mainstream success with incredible physical album sales, and cemented him as one of the most prolific artists of modern rap music. I've listened to this many times. There's just such incredible replay value here, and Kendrick is really just undeniable. Full disclosure that I am more of a Schoolboy Q fan than a Kendrick fan, and this album is still just a must listen. Here we have my favorite Schoolboy Q album, Oxymoron. I'll never forget hearing the song he did with 2 Chainz, What They Want. I was in college, I was at Campus Center, and I heard What They Want, 2 Chainz and Schoolboy Q, and I said, I have to go get this album right now. And I listened to this album so much that my junior year roommate at the time, Chris Chalero, absolutely hated me. And I listened to this album so much. The title track, Gangsta, which has the hook of Gangsta, Gangsta, Gangsta. My roommate would say that back to me. I listened to this album so much. And I mean, this is truly, it is as advertised, a gangster rap album. And for me, This is my favorite gangster rap album. Moving on. Future Dirty Sprite 2. I mean, this is a trap music classic. When I heard this song, when I heard this record, I thought to myself, no one should ever release another trap album again because this one is too good. You can't take the art form any higher. And I pretty much stand by that. I mean, of course, this is the deluxe edition, which has a lot of bonus tracks from the culmination of what were his 3 mixtapes previously before the release of this. Thought It Was a Drought, I Served the Bass, Where Ya At? Right, front-loaded, incredible songs. After this album came out, I went from like Future fan, you know, all my fandom of trap music stems from Young Thug. So I was a Young Thug fan before I could be a Future fan, and then I had to be a Future fan before I could be a Migos fan. But eventually, I just won over and a fan of all of it. And when this album came out, I remember thinking, I have to go see Future live. So me and Zach Sexton went out to Foxwoods Resort Casino in Connecticut, where he had 2 back-to-back sold-out shows, and it was absolutely incredible. I just had to hear these songs live. Absolutely loved it. Travis Scott. Speaking of people that have a lot of bandwagon fans out of nowhere all of a sudden, Travis Scott. I love me some Travis Scott. He is the real artist of rappers right now. Obviously, he's having his major success with Astroworld, just doing gangbusters, and a tour that is making him richer than God. But this is Rodeo, his first studio album. I love this. Sonically, I love this project. So dark. Of course, that chilling anthem, Antidote, is the standout song on here, but a song that I really think should have done more is Nightcrawler. Incredible beat, kind of some nice swayly overtones, and a verse from Chief Keef that is just so potent that he should have tried to get it back and keep it for himself. Travis Scott Rodeo, incredible album. Where It All Began, Machine Gun Kelly's first studio album, Lace Up. Really one of my favorites. I was obsessed with this guy. In post-Young Thug times, I was obsessed with this guy. He was so cool. He's such a rock star, such of like everything. I spent so much time watching his Kelly Vision videos, which were kind of his YouTube vlog style videos of him on tour and just doing cool stuff. I was introduced to this artist through my good friend, Phil, and I was sitting in my dorm room in college and Phil goes, "Hey, check out this video." And it was Wild Boy. And I saw it and I was like, I don't like this. And then I went back and watched it, and I went back and watched it, and I went back and watched it, and I was like, no, I do like this. And from then on, I just got really into Machine Gun Kelly. I also went to see him perform live one time, and it was super awesome. He's gone on to just do so many things with really big songs and doing movies and stuff, so shout out to him. I'm a really big fan. He delivered with his second album, General Admission, which I also have with me. I also have Bloom. Don't even worry about it. This guy was never afraid to be an individual, and that's what I respect about him so much. Machine Gun Kelly. This is Rocky's second album, which people waited for a very long time. and it delivered. Artistically, he tried so many things, but not to the point of testing, which was a little too much. He got some incredible verses on here from Wayne and from Kanye, and this was clearly right after the passing of Yams, and he really took the time to retreat and make a really beautiful album. At Long Last ASAP, this is an incredible album if you haven't heard it already. Then we've got The Bad Meets Evil. I was listening to my local radio station, which is Hot 937, and I hadn't heard about this album. They just started playing some songs off this album. They were awesome. There was actually a really big song that these guys had called Lighters with Bruno Mars, and love this album. Akon. I'm locked up, they won't let me out. Oh, they won't let me out. I did not buy this album. This is one of the very few albums in this drawer that I did not buy. Akon Trouble. Akon is Senegalese. My family on my father's side is Senegalese. And so my sister calls me up one day and says, "Do you know who Akon is?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you want his album?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I had this sent to me. It's a very nice gift. And this is a very enjoyable album. I haven't listened to it in a while, which I might just have to throw it into the CD player to see how it sounds at this point. Great album. Shout out to Akon, who truly did a lot of different things in the music industry and was able to roll it into some philanthropic work that I've heard about him doing as of late. So shout out to Akon. Here we go. My boy, YG, My Crazy Life. This is, I don't know if this is YG's first studio album. I want to say it is. He just was on fire. He had the mustard sound behind him. I heard the singles off this album, and I said I have to go get it. And the whole thing is really good. YG, My Crazy Life. There's not much for me to say about this. This guy is a living West Coast legend, and shout out to him. Well, you knew if I liked Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy wouldn't be far behind. Fall Out Boy, to me, right up there with Maroon 5 as, like, one of America's best bands. They've withstood the test of time. I was listening to these guys in high school. I'm listening to these guys now. Incredible vocalists in Patrick Sump and this Infinity on High. Easily still their best album, but such a moment, such a nostalgic, like, teeny bopper moment. Marshall Mathers LP. This is probably my favorite rap album and will probably always be my favorite rap album. This is so packed with wacky imagery, incredible metaphors, and just a flare of creativity that I don't think can ever be matched in a full project, because I don't think full projects will ever be minded to as highly as they were back in this physical CD time. Marshall Mathers LP. If you listen to one album out of everything in my drawer, I would suggest you listen to this one. Cobra Starship. We're just going to pull both Cobra Starship albums out. Cobra Starship Nightshades, the Cobra Starship Love album, not terribly essential. Cobra Starship Viva La Cobra, terribly essential. This was just such a time. Songs like Hot Mess and Good Girls Go Bad are songs that I could sing start to finish right now if I needed to. This band is just so much fun, and I just have good memories of high school looking at this album, in this album cover, Cobra Starship. Shout out to them. The other song I like off here is You're Not In on the Joke. Really fun song. Go check out Cobra Starship if you haven't. I was so lucky enough that Cobra Starship actually came to my school, UMass Amherst, when I was a sophomore, and I was able to see them perform before they broke up, and I was super happy about that. Big shout out to the lead singer of Cobra Starship, Gabe Saporta. He's out and working for Apple Music right now, and I definitely like Apple Music. I like Cobra Starship. I love it. I love it. Eminem, The Eminem Show. This is the second Eminem album that I ever got to experience. I actually borrowed it from a friend, and this is probably the second best Eminem album there is. I mean, I think it's really a tie between this and Slim Shady LP, but this is just such a great album. This album literally just reminds me of 2003 and MTV. Like, they are so synonymous. And it's interesting to see, even though MTV isn't the music powerhouse that it used to be, to see how being an MTV artist is still so important to any new artist coming out right now. Like a Billie Eilish or like a Lil Uzi. Those guys are MTV artists. Their brand is crafted in that direction to be original and outliers, but still super mainstream. So shout out to Eminem. He paved the way for a lot of artistry outside of rap music, and of course inside of rap music, an absolute legend. This is an album that I'm very personally attached to. You are looking at Eminem Encore. This is the first album I ever purchased with my own money. I was in grade school. I had listened to a friend's copy of this album. My friend Steve let me borrow it, and I was just taken to another world. And it was a wacky world, but I didn't want to leave. I bought my CD player and this album at the same time, Eminem Encore. I've listened to this album so many times. There's so many verses off of here that I know off the top of my head. And this introduced me to my favorite artist. I don't know if I need to repeat it. I truly think Eminem is the greatest rapper of all time, and by the very definitions of the word great, and best. I think Eminem is also the best rapper of all time by the definition of the word best, and a culmination of what makes someone lyrically proficient. Eminem Encore, definitely a great album that I'd suggest any rap listener listen to. Young Buck the Hood. I don't even know if this is... Oh no, this is Young Buck straight out of Cashville. This is just the hood that he's referencing over here. This album is really hard. I remember... Hard in a good way. I remember I was at the store whenever I bought this. It was between buying this and the G-Unit collaboration album, the G-Unit Posse album, and I went with this. Just off the strength of the singles, I've been listening to a whole lot of Let Me In, and I was definitely messing with Young Buck at this time. I was very influenced by my friend Chris and his older brother Steve in rap music, and it manifested in me getting way into G-Unit and 50 Cent and all this, and at the time, Young Buck was definitely my favorite member of G-Unit. To keep the G-Unit going, the Game Red album. This is a really good West Coast album, full of the sounds that you want to hear in a West Coast album. I really like Red Nation, Martians vs. Goblins. We have another Fall Out Boy album, Save the Rock and Roll, their big comeback album after having split up for some time. They super delivered with songs like My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark and Phoenix, and coming with the whole new rollout, which I'm surprised more artists haven't adopted, of really telling one big story with one visual that has essentially every album gets its own music video through a cohesive story. Fall Out Boy, Save the Rock and Roll. Gotta listen to this. Gotta listen to Where Did the Party Go? Such a fun song. Lil Wayne, The Carter 4. I bought this in the second Cobra Starship album at the same time. Great Wayne album. She Will, love that, featuring Drake. Also, 6 Foot, 7 Foot with Corey Guns, of course, is one of the Wayne classics. I think people would agree. Wayne did gangbusters on this album. Pretty sure he went platinum shortly after the first week. And this is just a classic Wayne album of him at his height. I know I'd mentioned being a big fan of various artists, and Franz Ferdinand is one of them. Back in the day, me and my friend Marty and Dan had kind of like a small band together, like early grade school, and we definitely took a lot of inspiration from Franz Ferdinand. This album has a lot of listening from me. This is their first album, they're self-titled, and I can remember just getting little summer jobs and having my CD player and whistling while I work. The first Franz Ferdinand album, this is one of my favorite bands, and I think they've really made some timeless music, and, you know, Take Me Out is a song that still gets people dancing to this day. Eminem Recovery. Really excited to talk about this album. This is Eminem's big comeback album after kind of beating drugs, narrowly escaping death, and having like a comeback album that didn't do that well. So he'd been through it all at this point, and this was the album that got everyone back on board. I think this was the best-selling album of whatever year it came out, and I personally really liked it. It had some really inspirational, like Creed 2 type, like inspirational songs. The one I really like off here, Cold Wind Blows, right at the beginning, very lyrical and in the pocket, like Eminem at his finest lyrically. Definitely go check this out. Of course, the big single off here is Love the Way You Lie with Rihanna. This is another good Wayne album. The Von Bondies, Love, Hate, and Then There's You. My God. This album, I think, is one of the more obscure albums in my collection that not many people probably know about. I was introduced to the Von Bondies through this video game on PlayStation 2 called Burnout 3. It was a racing game. Absolutely love that game. I grew to absolutely love this band. The Von Bondies were super indie and super punk, and they rock. And I can tell you, I'm getting rid of like 90% of the albums that are in this drawer, and this album is going nowhere. I love the Von Bondies. And if you have time to listen to a Von Bondi song, please, please listen to Pale Bride. and you're gonna get you're gonna instantly understand their allure. Here we have Drake. Nothing was the same. And truly at this point in Drake's life, nothing was the same. This is where he went from superstar to one of the most prolific artists in music and one of the biggest artists in music. This album is really good, and if you have to check out one song off here, it's gotta be Pound Cake. Paris Morton Music too. He's got a Hove verse on here, and the Drake-Hove relationship is still a big question mark to this day. Check this one out. We've got Rocky's first album. That's a must. This is essential. This is like a classic hip-hop moment, a resurgence for New York. Off here you gotta listen to PMW with Schoolboy Q. There's a great synergy between these two guys. I absolutely love this album. Then we have Panic at the Disco's third album. Very good. They were kind of rebuilding at this point, but still managed to put out a great album. And Franz Ferdinand Tonight. Alright, we did it. That is all the albums in my drawer, and essentially the musical story of my life. And so definitely let me know in the comments what's one CD in your collection that you're never letting go of. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, Organized Sound. From this point on, I'm really only putting out music-based content, and most of it being with regards to hip-hop, and most of that content being with regards to artists in the Northeast. So come on the journey with me, and definitely hit me up on social media if you have any questions or want any music recommendations or anything. I'm really excited. I have a lot of great content coming, so thank you for watching and stay tuned.